The ring light cast harsh shadows across Cameron's chiseled face. As Naomi adjusted the bronze contour for the 100th time that morning, her fingers worked with practiced precision, sculpting the angles that would make him irresistible to the camera and to the millions of followers who hung on his every post. "Babe, can you make my jawline pop more?" Cameron barely glanced at her through the vanity mirror, his attention fixed on his phone screen where notifications cascaded like digital confetti. Another brand deal, another collaboration, another step up the ladder she'd built for him, rung by painstaking rung. Naomi bit back her irritation and reached for the highlighting palette she'd custom mixed specifically for his skin tone. 3 years ago, Cameron Blake had been just another wannabe influencer with decent bone structure and big dreams. She'd been the one to see his potential, to craft his image from nothing. While he posed and preened, she'd been the puppet master pulling every string, booking shoots, negotiating deals, managing his entire aesthetic universe. "There," she murmured, stepping back to admire her handiwork. Cameron looked like a Greek god carved from bronze and bathed in golden light. Her creation, her masterpiece. He finally looked at her properly, and for a moment, she saw something flicker in his eyes, guilt, regret, but it vanished so quickly she wondered if she'd imagined it. "Naomi, we need to talk," the words every woman dreads. She set down her brush with hands that had started to tremble, though she couldn't say why. "What about?" Cameron stood up, his 6'3" frame towering over her in the cramped studio apartment that doubled as their workspace. He'd outgrown this place months ago, but Naomi had insisted they stay. She loved the controlled chaos of their creative sanctuary makeup palettes, scattered across every surface, ring lights positioned like metallic flowers, the constant hum of ambition in the air. "This isn't working anymore." His voice was flat, clinical, the same tone he used when rejecting brand partnerships that weren't quite right for his image. Naomi's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "The shoot went perfectly. Your engagement rates are not the work, Naomi, us." The word hung in the air like smoke. Naomi felt the ground shift beneath her feet, as if the earthquake that was always threatening Los Angeles had finally arrived. "I don't understand." But she did. She'd felt him pulling away for weeks, had noticed the way he checked his phone with increasing urgency, the mysterious late-night meetings he called networking opportunities. She'd chosen to ignore the signs, to lose herself deeper in perfecting his image, as if making him more beautiful could make him love her more. Cameron ran a hand through his perfectly tussled hair, the same hair she'd taught him to style, the same color she'd helped him choose after hours of research into what would photograph best, under different lighting conditions. "I've met someone else." The confession hit her like a physical blow. Naomi gripped the edge of the vanity to steady herself, her knuckles white against the dark wood. "Who?" "Ivy Vale." Of course, Ivy Vale, the ethereal supermodel with porcelain skin and 20 million Instagram followers. Ivy Vale, who'd been tagged in increasingly intimate photos with Cameron over the past month. Ivy Vale, who was everything Naomi wasn't: tall where she was average, blonde where she was brunette, effortlessly photogenic where she was perpetually behind the camera. "She wants to work with me," Cameron continued, his voice gaining momentum as if he were convincing himself as much as her. "Real campaigns, high fashion. This could be the break I've been waiting for." "The break you've been waiting for?" Naomi's voice cracked with disbelief. "Cameron, you have 2 million followers. You're working with major brands. You're booking magazine shoots. What do you think got you here?" He had the grace to look uncomfortable, but not enough to take it back. "This is different. Ivy has connections I could never get out." The words surprised them both. Naomi had always been the accommodating one, the supporter, the woman who smoothed over every conflict and absorbed every disappointment. But something had broken inside her, something that couldn't be fixed with concealer and setting spray. "Naomi, please get out." She turned away from him, facing the mirror where she could see her own reflection for the first time in months. Her face was bare of makeup, her dark eyes bright with unshed tears, her full lips pressed into a thin line. When had she become invisible in her own life? She heard him gather his things, the ring light she'd bought him for his birthday, the camera equipment they'd chosen together. the branded merchandise that bore his name but carried her fingerprints on every design choice. The door closed with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than if he'd slammed it. Naomi sank into the director's chair where she'd watched countless shoots, where she'd built an empire for someone else to inherit. The apartment felt cavernous, without his presence, filled with the ghosts of shared dreams and collaborative ambitions. Her phone buzzed, a notification from Instagram. Cameron had already posted a new photo, a candid shot of him and Ivy at some trendy rooftop bar, her delicate hand resting on his chest, both of them glowing with the kind of happiness that looked effortless, but was probably staged. The caption read, "When you know, you know." Hashtag new beginnings, hashtag blessed. The comments were already pouring in. Heart eye emojis and fire symbols, congratulations and praise for the beautiful couple. Not a single person asked about the woman who'd been by Cameron's side for 3 years, who'd helped craft the very image that had made him worthy of Ivy. Vale's attention. Naomi set her phone face down and looked around the apartment, their apartment, now just hers. Makeup palettes caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows. Thousands of dollars worth of products she'd collected and curated over years of perfecting her craft. She was good at what she did. Better than good. She was exceptional. So why did she feel like she was disappearing? 2 weeks after Cameron walked out, Naomi discovered the ultimate betrayal. She was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram at 2 a.m., unable to sleep in the bed that still smelled faintly of his cologne, when she saw it, Ivy Vale's latest tutorial video. "Hey gorgeous souls, today I'm sharing my signature golden hour goddess look that everyone's been asking about." Naomi's blood turned to ice. The golden hour goddess wasn't Ivy's signature look, it was hers. She'd created it 6 months ago for Cameron's Malibu beach shoot, a complex blend of warm bronzes and champagne highlights that mimicked the way natural light kissed skin at sunset. She'd spent hours perfecting the technique, adjusting ratios, finding the exact placement that would translate beautifully on camera. Now Ivy was demonstrating it step by step, her manicured fingers gliding across her flawless face as she explained color theory that Naomi had taught Cameron, who had obviously shared it with his new girlfriend. The video had already garnered 500,000 views and thousands of comments praising Ivy's innovative artistry. Naomi screenshot the video and opened her phone's voice memo app. Her hands were shaking with rage as she hit record. "This is unbelievable," she whispered into the darkness. 3 years I spent building someone else's dream, and now they're literally stealing my work and passing it off as original content. I created that look. I developed those techniques. I mixed those custom shades that Ivy's probably never even heard of." She paused the recording and stared at her reflection in her phone's black screen. Her face was swollen from crying, her usually perfect brows unplucked, her lips chapped from anxiety. When was the last time she'd done her own makeup? When was the last time she'd created something for herself instead of for Cameron's image? An idea began to form, dangerous and thrilling. Naomi got out of bed and padded to her vanity, switching on the ring light that cast everything in crisp, flattering illumination. She pulled out her phone and opened TikTok, an app she'd downloaded to study trends for Cameron, but never used for her own content. Her finger hovered over the camera button. What did she have to lose? Her relationship was over. Her career as someone's invisible support system had ended. She was 30 years old, talented beyond measure, and tired of being a ghost in her own life. She hit record. "Hey everyone, I'm Naomi, and I need to tell you something." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "You know that golden hour goddess look that's been all over your feed lately? The one that certain influencers are claiming they invented?" She paused, letting the implication sink in. "Well, I created it, along with about 50 other looks that have been making other people famous. While I stayed invisible." She reached for her makeup kit, her movements gaining confidence as she fell into familiar rhythms. "They said I wasn't the beauty in the story," she continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "So I'm writing a new one." What followed was 45 seconds of pure artistry. Naomi transformed her face with swift, sure strokes, narrating her process in a way that was both educational and mesmerizing. She didn't just apply makeup, she painted with it, sculpted with it, told a story with color and light that was uniquely Her own, but she didn't recreate the golden hour goddess look. Instead, she created something entirely new, a bold, smoky eye paired with a brilliant crimson lip that somehow managed to be both edgy and elegant. She called it Phoenix Rising. This is what happens when you stop trying to make other people shine and start glowing on your own terms, she concluded, looking directly into the camera with eyes that blazed with newfound purpose. They thought they could steal my fire. Instead, they just reminded me how hot I burn. She posted the video without hesitation, tagged it with strategic hashtags, and went to bed. When she woke up 6 hours later, her phone was buzzing constantly. The video had gone viral. 100,000 views overnight, climbing toward 100,000. The comments were overwhelming. Women thanking her for the tutorial, calling her an inspiration, asking for more content. But what struck her most were the messages from other creators who'd experienced similar betrayals, who'd watched their work get co-opted by people with bigger platforms and louder voices. She wasn't alone. There was an entire community of behind-the-scenes artists, invisible architects of other people's success, waiting for someone to give them permission to step into the light. Naomi's phone rang. An unknown number with a 310 area code. "Is this Naomi Cruz?" The voice was crisp, professional. "This is Sarah Chen from Luxe Beauty Labs. We've been following your work for some time, and after seeing your viral video this morning, we'd love to discuss a potential collaboration." Naomi sat up straighter. Luxe Beauty Labs was one of the most innovative indie makeup brands in the industry, known for discovering and nurturing raw talent. "What kind of collaboration?" "We think you have a unique voice that deserves its own platform. How would you feel about developing your own signature line? We're talking about a real partnership, not just a licensing deal. Your formulas, your vision, your name on every product." Through her window, Naomi could see the Hollywood sign gleaming in the morning sun, a symbol of dreams deferred and ambitions realized. For the first time in weeks, she smiled. "Tell me more." As Sarah outlined their vision, a makeup line that celebrated authenticity over perfection, artistry over influence, Naomi felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years of building Cameron's career, the electric thrill of creating something entirely her own. She was done being the woman behind the man. It was time to be the woman behind the brand. 8 months after that life-changing phone call, Naomi stood in the gleaming flagship store of Crustal Beauty in West Hollywood, watching customers test her signature Phoenix Rising palette. The space was everything she'd dreamed of: industrial, chic with warm copper accents, ring-lit mirrors at every station, and walls lined with products that bore her name in bold, unapologetic letters. "The Authenticity Collection is outselling our projections by 300%, Sarah Chen reported, her tablet displaying graphs that climbed steadily upward like digital mountains. "And the Phoenix Rising lipstick, we can barely keep it in stock." Naomi smiled, but her attention was caught by a teenage girl at the testing station who was recreating one of her tutorials with intense concentration. The girl's technique was flawless, her confidence radiant as she applied the bold red lip that had become Crush Girl's signature. "Excuse me," Naomi approached the girl. "That looks incredible on you." The teenager's eyes went wide. "Oh my God, you're Naomi Cruz. I follow all your tutorials. You're the reason I started doing makeup." She gestured to her face with paint-stained fingers. "I'm an art student at UCLA, and your videos taught me that makeup is just another medium. It's all about understanding color and light and bringing out what's already beautiful." This was why Naomi had turned down the fast money deals, the celebrity endorsement offers that would have made her rich overnight, but would have diluted her message. Crush Girl wasn't just about makeup, it was about empowerment, about teaching women to see themselves as artists rather than canvases to be fixed. Her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. "Cameron and Ivy are here." Naomi's stomach clenched, but she kept her expression neutral. She'd known this moment would come eventually. Los Angeles was a small town disguised as a big city, especially in the beauty industry. She excused herself from the student and walked toward the front of the store, her heels clicking against the polished concrete floors. Cameron looked different, thinner, somehow diminished. His golden tan had faded to a sallow yellow. and his famous jawline seemed less defined. The brand deals had dried up after a scandal involving undisclosed sponsorships and some questionable social media behavior that Naomi would have never let slide. Without her guiding hand, his image had crumbled. Ivy, on the other hand, looked as ethereal as ever, but there was something brittle about her perfection now. Recent tabloid stories had exposed the extensive work behind her natural beauty, the procedures, the retouching, the team of professionals required to maintain her illusion of effortless glamour. Naomi, Cameron's voice was uncertain, lacking the confidence that had once made him irresistible to brands and followers alike. "Congratulations on all this, it's impressive. Thank you." She kept her tone professional, polite. She was a businesswoman now, not a heartbroken ex-girlfriend. Ivy stepped forward, her smile as practiced as her poses. "I was hoping we could talk about a collaboration. Maybe my followers would love." "No." The word came out clean and final. Naomi had learned the power of that simple syllable over the past months. No to exploitation, no to settling, no to making herself smaller so others could shine brighter. Ivy's composure cracked slightly. "But surely you can see the benefit. I can see that you've built a career on work that isn't yours." Naomi interrupted. "The golden our goddess look you claim to invent. I have the original sketches, dated 6 months before you first posted it. The contouring technique you're famous for, I developed it for Cameron, who obviously shared it with you." Cameron had the grace to look ashamed, but Ivy's eyes flashed with something ugly. "That's ridiculous. Makeup techniques can't be copyrighted. Everyone borrows from everyone." "You're right," Naomi agreed, "which is why I'm not suing you. I'm just building something better." She gestured around the store, where women of all ages and ethnicities were experimenting with bold colors, learning techniques, celebrating their own unique beauty. This was her revolution, not fought in courtrooms or comment sections, but in the quiet moments when a woman looked in the mirror and saw an artist looking back. "Crusdrill isn't about borrowing or stealing," Naomi continued. "It's about creating, teaching, empowering people to develop their own signature looks instead of copying someone else's." Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her publicist. "Forbes wants to move up the cover shoot. The feature story is getting pushed to next month's issue. They want you as the lead story." Forbes, the magazine that had once featured Cameron in a Rising Stars roundup, an article Naomi had helped him prepare for, coaching him on his talking points, even suggesting the outfit he wore for the photo shoot. Now they wanted her, not as someone's +1 or behind-the-scenes contributor, but as the main event. "I have to go," she told Cameron and Ivy. "I have a cover shoot." As she walked toward the exit, she heard Ivy whisper to Cameron, "This was your idea of getting her back. She's completely changed." Naomi paused at the door and looked back at them, this beautiful, diminished couple who had once seemed so powerful, so untouchable. They looked lost in her space, like tourists in a country where they didn't speak the language. "You're right," she called back to Ivy. "I have changed. I stopped trying to make other people beautiful and started making myself powerful instead." Outside, her driver was waiting with a car that would take her to the Forbes photo shoot. As they pulled away from the store, Naomi caught a glimpse of Cameron and Ivy through the windows, still standing among her products, surrounded by the empire she'd built from their betrayal. She didn't feel anger anymore. She felt something far more satisfying: indifference. They'd given her the greatest gift imaginable. They'd forced her to bet on herself, and she was winning. 1 year later, Naomi stood backstage at the Global Beauty Innovators Summit in Paris, touching up her signature crimson lip in a handheld mirror. The Palais des Congrès buzzed with anticipation. This was the industry's most prestigious event, where beauty moguls and innovators gathered to shape the future of cosmetics. She'd been invited as the keynote speaker, honor that still felt surreal. 12 months ago, she'd been crying in her studio apartment, watching her ex-boyfriend flaunt his new relationship on social media. Now she was about to address an audience of thousands, representing a brand that had become a global phenomenon. 5 minutes, Ms. Cruz, a production assistant, called out. Naomi nodded, smoothing her black blazer, custom-tailored, elegant, and powerful. She'd learned to dress for the woman she was becoming, not the woman she'd been. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek chignon that showcased the bone structure she'd spent years perfecting on other people's faces, and her makeup was flawless but understated except for that bold red lip that had become her signature dot as she walked toward the stage. She passed a monitor showing the live stream. The comments were flying by faster than she could read them, but she caught fragments. Queen. Inspiration. She's glowing. Boss energy. The moderator, a renowned beauty journalist, was already on stage introducing her. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and CEO of Crustal Beauty, the woman who revolutionized authentic beauty standards and built a billion-dollar empire. From a single viral video, Naomi Cruz. The applause was thunderous. Naomi walked onto the stage with her head held high, her heels clicking confidently against the polished floor. The lights were bright, but not harsh. She'd learned to work with light instead of fighting it, to let it enhance rather than expose. The interview was wide-ranging and insightful. They discussed her philosophy of inclusive beauty, her commitment to sustainable packaging, her mentorship programs for aspiring artists. But then the moderator leaned forward with a knowing smile. "I have to ask about the elephant in the room," she said. "Your ex-boyfriend Cameron Blake and supermodel Ivy Vale were originally scheduled to appear on this very panel, but they pulled out last week. Rumor has it their joint cosmetics venture fell through after some creative differences. Any thoughts?" The audience fell silent, waiting for her response. This was the moment Naomi had been preparing for, consciously or not, since the day Cameron walked out of her life. She smiled, not the practiced smile of someone performing for cameras, but the genuine expression of someone who had found her truth. "You know," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium, "I used to think success meant helping someone else shine. I spent 3 years building someone else's empire, perfecting someone else's image, making someone else's dreams come true, and when that ended, I was devastated. I felt invisible, discarded, forgotten." She paused, her eyes scanning the audience. In the front row, she saw young women taking notes, their faces bright with attention and hope. But the most beautiful thing about hitting rock bottom is that you finally stop looking up at everyone else and start looking within. I realized I wasn't the supporting character in someone else's story. I was the author of my own. The applause started softly but built to a crescendo. Naomi raised her hand gently, and the audience quieted. 3 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be standing on this stage as a successful CEO, I wouldn't have believed them, not because I didn't have the talent or the vision, but because I'd convinced myself that my role was to make other people beautiful, not to be beautiful myself. And I don't just mean physically beautiful, I mean beautifully authentic, beautifully powerful, beautifully unapologetic about taking up space. The moderator leaned back, clearly moved by the response. "There's a question that's been trending on social media all week, and I think our audience would love to hear your answer." Someone posted, "What's the best revenge against people who underestimated you?" Naomi's smile deepened, reaching her eyes in a way that made her face radiate warmth and confidence. This was the question she'd been waiting for, the culmination of everything she'd learned about herself and her worth, success that doesn't look back. She said simply. The audience erupted. People were on their feet, cheering, whistling, crying. Naomi felt the energy wash over her like a warm tide, but she remained centered, grounded in her truth. "Revenge implies you're still thinking about the people who hurt you," she continued when the applause died down. "But true success, the kind that transforms not just your bank account, but your soul, happens when you stop looking in the rearview mirror and start focusing on the horizon ahead." As she left the stage to a standing ovation, Naomi felt lighter than she had in years, not because she'd proven anything to Cameron or Ivy. They'd become footnotes in her story, irrelevant to her present and future. She felt light because she'd finally stepped fully into herself. 2 weeks later, the Forbes cover hit newsstands worldwide. Naomi's face gazed out from magazine racks in airports and bookstores, her signature red lip bold against the stark white background. The headline read, "From Dump to Dominating: How Naomi Cruz Built a Beauty Empire from Heartbreak." In the article, she'd talked about resilience, authenticity, and the power of betting on yourself. She'd shared her vision for expanding Crustal into education, mentorship, and global accessibility. But she hadn't mentioned Cameron or Ivy by name, not once. They weren't part of her story anymore. They were part of her origin story, the catalyst that had launched her into orbit. But now she was flying solo, burning bright in a universe of her own creation. On the night the magazine hit stands, Naomi stood on the balcony of her Malibu home, looking out at the Pacific Ocean. The water stretched endlessly toward the horizon, dark and infinite and full of possibility. She was alone, but she wasn't lonely. She was complete. Her phone buzzed with congratulations from friends, colleagues, mentees she'd supported through their own transformations. But she set it aside and simply stood in the salt air, feeling the weight of her journey and the lightness of her future. She had become exactly who she was meant to be, not the woman behind the man, not the invisible architect of someone else's success, but the undeniable, radiant, powerful force at the center of her own universe. She glowed alone, and it was magnificent.